What if I told you the most dangerous cars in American history didn't shout for attention? They didn't wear neon stripes. They didn't have cartoonish wings. They didn't beg you to race them at stoplights. They hid in plain sight. They looked like luxury cruisers, family coupes, polite little sports cars you could park outside a country club without raising an eyebrow. But under the hood, they were factory-built weapons, quietly terrifying, brutally fast, and absolutely unforgiving. These weren't cars designed for normal people. They were engineering experiments, homologation loopholes, corporate middle fingers disguised as transportation. And almost all of them came from a short, reckless window in American history, before traction control, before airbags, before lawsuits decided what engineers were allowed to dream about. This was the early 1960s, the golden age of corporate horsepower wars, a time when Detroit built race cars first and worried about consequences later. No warning labels, no electronic safety nets, just steel, gasoline, and ego. And it all starts with a car that looked more Hollywood than hardcore. The 1957 Ford Thunderbird F-Code. At first glance, it was everything the 1950s promised. Long, sculpted body lines, jet-age optimism, chrome everywhere, white-wall tires, power seats, a dashboard that looked like it belonged in a fighter plane. This wasn't supposed to be a brute. It was supposed to be glamorous. A boulevard cruiser for movie stars and executives. But buried deep in the order sheet, almost like a secret handshake, was a single letter, F. One letter that transformed the Thunderbird from a stylish toy into something genuinely dangerous. Under that hood sat Ford's special 312 cubic inch Y-block V8. But this wasn't the standard engine. This one was force-fed by a McCulloch-Paxton centrifugal supercharger, a serious piece of hardware borrowed directly from racing. And Ford didn't slap it on casually. They knew what they were doing. Lower compression heads, a sealed Holley 4-barrel carburetor, special ignition tuning, all engineered so the engine wouldn't grenade itself the first time an owner mashed the throttle. On paper, Ford rated it at 300 horsepower. Torque? North of 340 pound-feet. But insiders knew better. There was a hotter NASCAR tune floating around, rumored to make closer to 340 horsepower, and Ford quietly let those engines find their way into the right hands. This wasn't built for golf courses or date nights. It was built so Ford could homologate supercharged cars for racing and prove they could beat Chevrolet and Chrysler on the biggest stages. Only about 200 road-going F-Code Thunderbirds were ever built. On the street, they ran from 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds. Top speed hovered near 130 miles per hour. In the late 1950s, that was absolutely unhinged. And the scariest part? Nothing about the car warned you. No spoilers, no hood scoops, no racing stripes, just a quiet, confident threat. But Ford wasn't done. Because soon they figured out something that would change racing forever. Horsepower mattered. Weight mattered. But aerodynamics? Aerodynamics won races. Enter the 1960 Ford Starliner. At a time when most American cars were shaped like bricks, the Starliner looked like it came from the future. A sleek fastback roofline, thin pillars, a long, tapering rear designed to cheat the wind at NASCAR speeds. Most Starliners sold to regular customers were tame, comfortable, forgettable, but the ones ordered with the 352 high-performance V8, those were something else entirely. High compression, solid lifters, a special intake manifold, a big Holley 4-barrel. Carefully selected internal components meant to survive sustained high RPM. This wasn't marketing fluff. This was real competition hardware hiding inside a full-size body. Motor Life magazine got their hands on one, and even they seemed shocked by what it could do. 0 to 60 in just over 7 seconds. Quarter-mile times in the low 15ths. And remember, this car weighed nearly 4,200 pounds. Then came the part that stunned everyone. A verified run on a high-speed oval recorded over 150 miles per hour. Not modified, not stripped. Factory stock. This wasn't a muscle car. The muscle car era hadn't even started yet. This was a luxury missile, built to dominate NASCAR superspeedways while pretending to be a family car. But while Ford was refining brute force and aerodynamics, Chevrolet was doing something even more radical. They were rewriting the math. In 1961, Chevrolet released a Corvette that broke an unspoken rule of American performance. 1 horsepower per cubic inch. The 1961 Corvette 283 fuel-injected V8 made 315 horsepower. No supercharger. No turbo. Just precision. The heart of it all was Rochester mechanical fuel injection. Not electronic. Not forgiving. This system delivered fuel with surgical accuracy. Instant throttle response. No carburetor stumble. No hesitation. No mercy. You didn't ease into power with this car. You committed. Road tests recorded 0 to 60 in around 5.5 seconds. Quarter-mile times in the low 14s at nearly 100 miles per hour. In the early 1960s, those were sports car numbers that embarrassed European exotics. And here's the part most people forget. Only about 1,400 fuel-injected Corvettes were built that year. They were expensive. They were temperamental. And if you didn't understand how they worked, they were terrifying. Cold starts were brutal. Throttle inputs had to be precise. One mistake mid-corner could put you into a ditch. These cars rewarded skill and punished arrogance. For a brief moment, Chevy ruled the performance world. But not for long, because over in Chrysler land, engineers had stopped caring about appearances entirely. They cared about one thing: winning. The 1962 Plymouth Fury Super Stock 413 didn't try to hide what it was. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't elegant. It didn't apologize. It was shorter, lighter, and controversial from the moment it appeared. Customers hated the styling. Dealers complained. Sales suffered. Drag racers? They couldn't get enough. Under the hood was Chrysler's RB Series 413 cubic inch V8, transformed into a factory-built race engine. Massive intake ports, forged crankshaft, forged rods, forged pistons, a savage solid-lifter camshaft that sounded angry at idle. Topping it all off was a cross-ram intake with dual Carter 4-barrels. Long runners designed to make torque everywhere. Compression ratios climbed as high as 13.5 to 1. This wasn't pump gas friendly. This was race fuel territory. Chrysler officially rated it at over 420 horsepower. Nobody believed that number. Everyone knew it was more. This wasn't a street car pretending to race. It was a race car pretending barely to be street legal. Minimal interiors, heavy-duty driveline components, steep rear gears, and on the drag strip, low 12-second quarter miles, sometimes quicker with the right driver. Only 57 were built. Not rare. Mythical. Pontiac watched all of this unfold and decided subtlety was overrated. Their response? Escalation. The 1962 Pontiac Catalina 421 Super Duty looked like something your parents might drive. For doors, bench seats, nothing flashy. But underneath, it was engineered like a sledgehammer. A 421 cubic inch V8 with 4-bolt main bearings. Forged rotating assembly. High-flow NASCAR-derived cylinder heads. Dual 4-barrel carburetors. Pontiac rated it at 405 horsepower. Insiders laughed. Aluminum front ends shaved weight. Aluminum bumpers replaced steel. Sound deadening disappeared. Creature comforts were optional or simply gone. Motor Trend tested one in winter conditions. On skinny bias-ply tires. On cold pavement. 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds. Quarter mile in the high 13ths at over 107 miles per hour. In 1962. Pontiac built fewer than 180 Super Duty cars total. Each one was a rolling middle finger to restraint. Then came the car that scared everyone, including its own creator. The Shelby Cobra 260. Carroll Shelby looked at a lightweight British AC Ace Roadster and saw potential. Then he looked at Ford's small-block V8 and saw chaos. He combined them. The result wasn't balanced. It wasn't refined. It wasn't safe. It was violent. The 260 cubic inch V8 made roughly 260 horsepower. The car weighed under 2,000 pounds. Do the math. 0 to 60 happened in just over 4 seconds. Top speed exceeded 150 miles per hour. No roof, no traction aids, no power steering. Side pipes screaming inches from your legs. You didn't drive a Cobra. You survived it. Shelby needed 100 cars for homologation. He barely made it happen. Many early 260 Cobras were later upgraded with bigger engines, making original examples incredibly rare today. But Chrysler wasn't done terrifying the public. The 1962 Dodge Dart 413 Max Wedge took the same superstock brutality and stuffed it into an even smaller body. Short wheelbase, less weight, more attitude, stripped interiors, police-spec suspension, huge intake runners, up to 13.5:1 compression. These cars were barely legal, built specifically to dominate superstock racing. Only about 200 were made. Quarter-mile times landed in the mid-13s at over 106 miles per hour, on bias-ply tires, with drum brakes, and zero electronic help. Ford answered back. Not with elegance, but with desperation and brilliance. The 1963 Galaxie 500 lightweight F-Code, a full-size car put on a starvation diet. Fiberglass body panels, aluminum bumpers, no radio, no heater, no sound deadening, thin glass. Under the hood sat Ford's dual-quad 427, officially rated at 425 horsepower. Unofficially, much more. These cars ripped through the quarter-mile in the high 11s. Some dipped even lower. Ford built just over 200, and then Chevrolet went nuclear. The 1963 Impala Z11 lightweight wasn't a muscle car. It was a factory drag racer with license plates. Aluminum fenders, aluminum hood, aluminum bumpers, aluminum intake, thin glass, special cowl induction. The 427 under the hood made over 430 horsepower and nearly 575 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds. Quarter-mile times in the high 10s at over 120 miles per hour. In a full-size Chevrolet, with 4 doors and bench seats. It dominated everything, until GM panicked and pulled the plug on factory racing. And just like that, the era ended. Corporate bans, insurance pressure, government scrutiny. Detroit suddenly remembered the word restraint. But for a brief, reckless, unforgettable moment, they forgot fear. These cars weren't built to be safe. They weren't built to be practical. They weren't built to last forever. They were built to win at any cost. And they changed American performance forever. If this era fascinates you, if raw, unfiltered horsepower still gives you chills, if the idea of machines that demanded respect still excites you, then you already belong here. Tap that like button like you're staging at the lights. Drop a comment telling me which one scared you the most. And subscribe because the next story, it's even faster, even louder, and even more dangerous. See you in the next one.